This
To all of
conference will
you.
now be recorded.
Oh, there we go. So, welcome to all of you who are joining us this afternoon here for our first virtual tech chat, thanks to the organization Foreign Language Educators of New Jersey. We here in New Jersey know as FLENJ. So, that's our acronym for our state organization. I am Noemi Rodriguez. I am happy to be co facilitating and co organizing today's chat. I want to introduce some very important people who are helping me today with our virtual tech chat. First, I'd like to introduce, she's technically on my right now. Alice is our FLENJ president, and she is a French teacher. And Alice, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I actually teach French, Spanish, and ELL at Shore Regional High School, and I adjunct at Monmouth University. I just wanted to say thank you so much to uh, Noemi Rodriguez and Julia Koch for putting this series together. And I also want to thank today's facilitators, Noemi for facilitating, Shannon Lorenzo and Caleb Howard. Thank you so much for giving your time and expertise to FLENJ and to the World Language Learners of New Jersey and beyond. And thank you to all of you for joining in today.
Thank you, Alice. We're excited to be invited.
That was Shannon Lorenzo. Shannon, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'll make this quick. I'm currently teaching in a high school setting. At the moment, I teach Spanish 1 and 2 with in-class support. This is my 18th year teaching, and previously I taught at both the elementary and middle school levels as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shannon. And Caleb, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Caleb. I teach in Vineland, New Jersey, kindergarten through 5th grade Spanish. I have 2 daughters, 2nd grade and 4th grade, and the 4th grader is turning 10 years old this week.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
So I just want to make sure that those of you that are newly joining us, you have access to the slideshow that we're presenting today. If you have another device and you want to obviously participate on the other device or participate here in the slideshow, but either way, you can access this. It was originally sent to you through the registration document. It should have been automatically shared with you when you registered for today's chat. If for some reason it didn't come through, if you scroll all the way to the top of our chat before we got started, I embedded a slideshow link. And then I also embedded, if you're interested, because FLENJ is not charging for these sessions. However, if you're interested in providing a monetary donation, the organization welcomes that. So those 2 links are there, as well as they're embedded within the slideshow for today's chat. Just wanted to make note of that before we got started. And also, for those of you wondering, the PD certificates will come to you again automatically, but after you fill out the feedback form. So that'll be shared a little bit later today as well throughout our hour together. But just wanted to share those little details as we get through today's session together. So welcome officially to our first tech chat. As we went through, I shared with you earlier about ideally if you can donate, please do so. And we would happily want to continue these types of programs. And it relies on obviously donations and registrations and memberships to keep the organization going and current. So you're welcome to donate if you can. Again, no obligation to, but just wanted to, again, make mention of that. We introduced everybody already, just in case. So that way, if you're on Twitter, you can follow all of these folks on Twitter and you can continue to get connected within your own professional learning network through social media as well. And FLENJ also has a Twitter account, an Instagram account, and a Facebook presence. So FLENJ is very active as well on social media. So today we're going to be talking about asynchronous or synchronous distance learning, as they call it now, and what we're doing in the classroom. Tech tools that we love using thus far and have kind of been lifesavers for us. And a lot of you who wrote in asked specifically about what's working, right? And what's been helping you, or where can I go for this tool, or where can I go for this resource? So my hope is that our 3 teachers today will be able to assist with their resources and their ideas that have been keeping them afloat over these past few weeks as we've transitioned to distance learning. So I'm going to turn it over to Shannon first to share a little bit about what's been working for her in her classroom.
Excellent. Thank you again for the invitation from FLENJ. I have a very brief slideshow. I'm going to try to share my screen. Excellent. Okay. So, like usual, I think it's so important to just, share gratitude in these very difficult times. I'm just grateful to FLENJ, who is always a leader in world language and connecting teachers, not just within our state, but all over our country for, best practices. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that I am working with. And certainly if you have questions, you can contact me. I'm noticing in the window, though, that I'm not in present mode, even though it's present mode on my computer. I'm going to go through the slides, but if you're having an issue, please let me know. One of the quotes on slide 3 that I have found to be so helpful to keep in mind as we navigate through teaching and learning through COVID-19, I'm finding with my students that less is more, that it's really important for me to remember quality over quantity. More importantly, relationships over rigor, grace before grades, patience over programs, and love before lessons. So I think it's just really important to keep that in mind as we navigate through these times, because I know my students in their homes, thank you, are struggling with a lot of the same things we're struggling with in our own homes. So I feel like this is sometimes a quote that I read to myself every morning to help anchor my intention, which I think is essential. So most importantly, when we're talking about connections, some of the things that are working for me in my classroom is communicating with my students over multiple platforms. So what I find is most useful is to use the Remind app, which I know is possible when you have students that actually have devices. And we have to acknowledge that all over the state of New Jersey, there's a lot of diversity in terms of district access to individual devices. But most of my students, I currently am teaching at Cranford High School in Union County, New Jersey. They do have cell phones, and Remind is the best way to connect with them because whatever information I have to share, I share it in one place. We also are Google Apps for Education schools, so Google Classroom is a place where I also reach out to them. In addition to Remind and Google Classroom, Gmail, phone calls, one-to-one Google Meet, and like small group Zoom meetings are things that I feel like have been really working. And a lot of these attempts to reach out and connect are happening simultaneously. So I can kind of be in a Zoom meet and I have students like texting me through Remind. And so sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, but what I'm finding is not very many of my students are actually sitting down like with a laptop and in a deliberate way, kind of like connecting with their teachers. I feel like a lot of my students are trying to do work on their cell phones. So I know as their teacher that I have to hit multiple places each week in order to connect with all of them. Another thing that I found really helpful was a student feedback form. So we're officially in week 4 of instruction in my district. We had 3 weeks, then spring break, and this is our first week back. And as we have, as the weeks have gone on, we've kind of ramped it up a little bit. But as a teacher, I'm constantly wondering like if what I'm doing is working and making sense and if I'm best meeting my students' needs. So I decided to create a Google survey related to student feedback to see after 3 weeks, how do they feel, what is working, what's not working. And specifically with relation to the use of digital tools, as I shared, I'm using multiple platforms. I wanted to understand if they are actually, what space is the best for me to reach out to them. I also asked them about the tasks that I'm sharing out, if they, were clear and if they could understand my instructions and if they were able to complete the test independently or needed more either small group or one-on-one support. I'm not sure why my screen is not advancing. So the next slide was about student feedback. The next thing is personal time management. My high school students, even though they should be in a better position to manage their time than let's say middle school or high school, the truth is they're having a hard time with the lack of structure, just like some of us may be. And then the other question, of course, I wanted to make sure is they felt that their communication with myself, and I also have an in-class support teacher, that it was sufficient, that they were getting the information that they needed in a timely manner. So I got some really good data back from that and made some adjustments based on some of the things that they mentioned. The other thing that I'm noticing related to my students is just organization. So there are a few templates that you'll see on the slideshow that you could potentially make copies of and use with your own students. So one of the things was the class meeting schedule. We are a school that does rotating drops. So we have days 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we've decided to change it to a day A and a day B with Zoom sessions that, of course, are strongly encouraged but not required. So I created a template that students could then use in order to kind of create their own personal schedule, because I think that they're having a hard time knowing where to find things and when things are due. So that brings me to the second template, which is like the virtual learning, let's say calendar of work and assignments, so that they can then take that piece of paper, and even if they don't do it digitally, but just on paper, say, okay, these are each one of my periods, this is the content area, and this is when the dates due. And then the last thing that I'm doing, like in terms of my class, is almost like a course landing page. So sometimes one of the things that I received back, feedback that I received from my students, was they couldn't find everything they needed. Like, where was the video? Where was the reading? Where was the assignment? So I created a like virtual calendar of work, and it's just a like a table, and it has the dates. Okay, watch, read, complete, the due date, and then I also, the last column is an invitation to interact about when I will be on Zoom and when I won't be. So I've shared with them that, of course, I'm available in between classes or around lunchtime, which is typical of what would happen in our normal face-to-face classes, right? If we were in the building, they, of course, have me at a scheduled period, but generally we would spend at least an hour each day at lunch, and kids could drop by for extra help. So I've tried to kind of keep that similar structure for them. But I would say the reports that I'm receiving from my students after 3 to 4 weeks of this is that they're feeling overwhelmed. They can't always find things, and then they're unclear about how to manage their time. So a lot of the resources that I've shared have focused just on getting them set up for this new way of learning. So that has, been helpful both for them and me. If they ever have a question, they go back to this one document where everything is, gathered, all the links in one place, rather than having to dig through a Google Classroom stream. And so far, these things are the things that I'm finding most effective. I know when I was reading through some of the responses of the participants on the call, that many of you are looking for almost like a model template for lesson plans. And so I spent a little bit of time thinking about that. And I felt like certainly we can explore those ideas throughout our time together this afternoon. But I was thinking how different each one of our situations are, not just in terms of content level or grade level or content area, but also in terms of like our Zoom meeting times. For example, I have only 25 minutes every other day with my students, whereas some of the things that I was reading that registrants had posted, they have 15-minute Zoom sessions, maybe each day, or once every 3 days. So I think that's definitely a very rich thing to, an important topic to talk about in terms of lesson plan template. But I don't know if we could come up with one in particular, considering that so many of our settings are different. But I think what we know in world language teachers, and what we know from the standards in the state of New Jersey, is that if we're hitting those modes of, interpretive, reading and listening, writing, speaking, those are the important things that we want to touch on at least once per week, if we can't do it once per class session the way we generally would if we were face-to-face. So those are some of the things that I have to offer you this afternoon. If you guys have any questions, obviously all of these documents are linked in the slideshow. So feel free to use what works for you.
Thank you, Shannon. That was very insightful to just understand how you elicited that student feedback to then help guide what you were doing going forward. So I just want to give folks who are joining us as well the opportunity now, if they wanted to ask Shannon directly some questions about what she just talked about before we go with Caleb and also Alice sharing. So would anyone like to unmute their microphone, ask a question, or if you prefer to put a question in the chat and then we can ask on your behalf?
There is a question from Lena asking where might she be able to get your slides, Shannon?
So if you are on the slideshow, the virtual tech chat slideshow that Noemi, is it, you sent that out through the registration, right?
Right.
So is it slide 4 or 5 that has the link?
It is slide 6, actually, because we added that new slide to the start. Yeah, so slide 6 has all the different links that we believe we'll talk about today and highlight, and it's all compiled, and if we add any more, we'll certainly do that. But Shannon's slideshow is there.
And always feel free to reach out to me. So I left my email address, sralorenzo@gmail. So if you have questions or there's something that you want more of, just reach out to me individually and I'd help.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Is Eric talking right now? Do I see?
Yeah, I wanted to ask something.
Okay.
Yeah, did you you said that you cut down on the amount of your teaching or the material you presented. Could you give a specific example?
Yeah, so I currently am in a district that is, I feel like very in tune with the fact that, you know, what we're going through right now is not normal. And so to continue the curriculum at the pace that we normally would is probably not going to work for students or teachers. So the truth is the reading that I shared with my students for my Spanish 1 class with La Semana Santa, that was just like a simple reading and a 10-question interpretive task, and that is it for the week. Meanwhile, in my own face-to-face class, I mean, that would be something that would just take a part of one 55-minute period, and then we would move on to something else. So I think your point is really a good one. And if I stay rooted in these, I feel like foundational things that we think about as we're language teachers in terms of, you know, what do we want students to be able to do at the end of each course? So for me in Spanish 1, we talk a lot about celebrations, and I want them to be able to speak to the products, practices, and perspectives of different countries and different celebrations, which we've done, right? We talked about Dia de los Muertos. We talked about lots of celebrations all year. So I'm trying to be consistent with my themes, and then of course consistent with some of my can-do statements, but knowing there's no way I would be able to hit all the can-do statements that I would normally want to during a face-to-face, you know, year, let's say a traditional year. I've kind of accepted that that's not going to happen, right? So I've modified greatly the volume and my expectations.
Okay, thank you. That's explained a lot. Thank you.
So I do want to share too, in New Jersey, the SGO requirement for the end of the year has been eliminated. So yes. So those of you that are in New Jersey, that will no longer be a part of the end of year quote unquote evaluation. So, and I don't think evaluations are going to happen. There's a lot that's changing. Just as Shannon pointed out, that this is not a normal time for us to be teaching. And I think it's important to go deeper as opposed to going broad, and to really just continue to be in tune with your students and how they're feeling and supporting positivity throughout this really hard time. But thank you for your question, Eric. And I'm going to turn it over next to Caleb in the elementary world, so he can give some insight as to what's been working for him and what has been helpful for his distance learning platforms.
Okay, well, thank you, Noemi and Shannon. Thanks so much for that. Whenever I hear another teacher share ideas, I always wish, oh man, I wish I could be in their classroom. And I felt the same way with Shannon, but it's nice to be with you all. It's nice to see faces instead of, you know, just being in my house cooped up the whole time. And anytime that I get to be involved with professional organizations like the Foreign Language Educators of New Jersey, I always feel like I leave with more energy and more ideas. The day-to-day grind of being a teacher, at least for me, I always feel like worn out, and it's sometimes hard to find the energy to take the next step. But involvement with things like this is a lifeline for me. So thank you guys for joining it in and for the questions that you're asking, and just that you're here is inspiring to me. So thanks so much for that. So on the screen share, I wanted to share with you a collection of videos, online authentic resources. By way of a thumbs up, are you seeing that screen? That is like a whole bunch of playlists. Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk about that mostly, and how I'm using collections of videos in the interpretive mode, in the interpersonal mode, and in the presentational mode. But before I do, I wanted to tell you what my students are like. I have 600 students that are from kindergarten through 5th grade. When they were announced that the schools were going to be closed, the teachers were pulling out their hair, wondering what they were going to plan and what they were going to do. And we found out that a lot of the households of students that we service don't have access to internet. And so when we were preparing all of these online resources, we were like, oh no, how are they even going to access these? So the first week or two of the schools being shut down was a lot of work of like, how can we point our parents to like free internet through the Comcast Internet Essentials? How can we make sure that the students have devices? So I think our school passed out we would have Chromebook pickup times, and so one of the main challenges for us has just been, can we even ensure that the students are accessing? And again, my students are the little ones. Some of them don't even know how to tie their shoe, and so then we're asking them to, do things on the internet. So as a Spanish teacher, working with all 600 students, I've been trying to keep in mind, how can I make things as streamlined as possible? How can I make them as simple as possible for my little ones that need procedures and need routines? But this has just thrown a whole wrench into their daily life, into their academic life. How can I establish things that they can anticipate, things that they can count on, so that when they're exploring the next assignment from me, they're not having to relearn a whole nother tech tool. They're not having to, relearn a whole bunch of procedures or figure out what are my expectations. So I've tried to be simple, simple, simple. And then I've just tried to be a cheerleader. Anytime we do get a student that is participating, anytime there's a parent that's asking a question about how to access something, I'm just like, hooray, because we want to keep them coming back. And with all of that said, I think I post weekly assignments, and I haven't gotten 50% of the students that have been participating. So again, my goal is how much can I get students to be involved and then keep them involved. So again, going back to how this works with what I'm showing you on my screen of playlist, I want to lead my students to what's fascinating and engaging about the target culture. It's just, obviously you guys are language teachers, so you are with me in that the target culture contains such beautiful people and customs and practices and foods. So on my playlists here, if you want to access them, you can just go to my YouTube channel, and instead of clicking on my videos or clicking on home, you can click on playlists. And in my free time, when I'm, I just enjoy finding things. And so I've organized them. They're not in any particular order, but they're grouped by countries. So there's about El Salvador, Mexico, Panama. There's some on Música Andina. There are ones about cooking tortillas over a fire. There's things about poverty. There's birthday. There's like games and hand games. There's things about tropical fruits and young boys climbing up palm trees. And so what I do is I just think, what is the most interesting, fascinating, engaging thing that when my students see it, they're going to have something sparked within their soul that says, wow, this is something that I want to get to know. And from these playlists, I have a lot to choose from. If you're a French teacher, I also have, I found the American Association of Teachers of French also has something like this on their YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and type in AATF French, they also have a whole bunch of curated playlists that give you access to different conversations, different scenarios. And so real quick, I'm just going to show you how from just this simple one place, I create my interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational tasks. So I'm going to try to get this up on the screen. All right, so the first thing is, which I already mentioned, is just find the resource that you like. Find an authentic online resource that provides an engaging window into the beauty and fascination of the culture, target culture. And what I've done in the interpretive mode is I take that video, I highlight the URL, like where the video is found, and I stick it into Edpuzzle, and then I can create custom questions in the target language. The questions are scaffolded with a proficiency level of my learners in mind. So it can be something if I'm focusing on a unit of color or a unit of numbers or a unit of describing things with adjectives, then I can just take whatever the video is and create questions that will allow me to focus on those skills in the target language. I'm not going to take a moment to show you a sample, but you can access all these links. So everything that's highlighted here, the top link will direct you to Edpuzzle. The target language questions will show you exactly how to create custom questions if you haven't used Edpuzzle. And then there's a sample of one that I've made. And then with Edpuzzle, you can easily collect and analyze the assessment data for providing student feedback and for grade reporting. So that's just one of a zillion ideas for interpretive mode, but I just do that and then I repeat it over and over again so that they just are used to the technology and they're finding something engaging and interesting about the target culture. For the interpersonal mode, I'll do the same thing. I'll find an authentic online resource from those playlists, something that's beautiful, something that's fascinating. But instead of focusing on the interpretive mode, I might send the link to your students. So send the link of whatever it is and tell them, I want you to explore this video, or if it's not a video, explore whatever resource it is, explore it on your own, and prepare to ask and answer target language questions about what you saw and what you explored. And then you can invite the small groups of your students to an online meeting and discuss the resource in the target language. And I included a link there for, I wrote a document that has tips for hosting glitch-free online meetings. And then for presentational mode, again, very simple, find that authentic online resource and send the link to your students and have your students write and submit a response to a thought-provoking question that you pose about the resource. And alternatively, depending on the age of your students or their ability with technology, you can have them video record or audio record their response. So in summary, I wish I had more languages for you, but there's the playlist for Spanish, playlist for French, so many more things out there. But keeping it simple so that every time they come back to me, they keep coming back, the students keep coming back, and I make it as simple as possible for them. So with that, I want to thank you, and I would like to turn this back over to Noemi, if I can figure out how to turn it back over.
Thank you, Caleb. So I just wanted to give those of you that are here the opportunity, if you have questions or wonderings with regards to what Caleb just shared, you're welcome to either unmute yourself or add a question to our chat, and you're welcome to ask whatever it is that you're wondering with regards to what he just shared. No problem, Jim. Just saw thanks for the sites from Jim. I love with Caleb's presentation, and what is working for him is that it always goes back to that authentic resource, and it always goes back to highlighting what's happening in the target culture, which is really great. So hopefully we're doing that anyway in our classes, but now we've just transitioned that to a digital platform. So our last person sharing today is Alice. So I'm going to turn it over to her now to share what's working for her in her world language classroom.
Thanks so much, Noemi. Thank you to Shannon and Caleb. I really identify with the less is more, the KISS, and those quotes that you had, Shannon, initially just really rang so true. Just a little bit of background on what it has been in my situation. At the university level where I adjunct for 2 courses, they have gone asynchronous. So I really miss those 2 evenings a week that I get to spend with them, and I end up making for them all of these input videos and checking up on them, but we have not really had any time to come together synchronously. Whereas at the high school, where I teach 6 classes with 5 preps, 110 students, I do 4 French classes, 1 Spanish 1 class, and 1 ELL class. It's probably been the most challenging year of 25 years in teaching for me, let alone then switching now to the virtual platform, which as our school went to the virtual platform, we decided to go synchronous, which at first the teachers were all agog. We didn't know how was that going to be. I have 3 young children at home, so they're next to me and I'm trying to run a class, and it is, to put it lightly, it is bedlam. It is mayhem, but we're making it work. And back to, again, how Shannon, you started, we're human. The kids see me here, not every day am I dressed up. Sometimes I'm in pajamas, maybe I put on a scarf over pajamas, but you know what, I'm real. And I love it because sometimes I'll get to class maybe 1 or 2 minutes late and the kids will be like, Madame, tu es en retard. And they're right, and I'm late. But you know what? That's okay because I'm real and this is real and they're getting on me for that. And it is so real and it's so human, and we are down to those elements. So I cherish those little moments when they get on me for being 2 minutes late or sending the wrong link or something like that. So just back to our schedule, when we went synchronous for the first 2 weeks, we had 83-minute classes in synchronous time. So we were sending out links to our students to meet for 83 minutes virtually. Wow. I don't know if I ever had their attention for 83 minutes as I'm getting them now on this virtual platform. So silver lining number 202 is when I'm delivering content and when we are interacting, their attention, when I call their name, I have my what I call my virtual popsicle sticks, and I will look at my attendance list during the class, and they don't know who's being called on next, and all of a sudden, whoop, student C is being called on, and he or she has to respond to my interpretive question. So interpretive mode has been working wonderfully as we live in the synchronous world, in my experience. And to go back to, again, what Caleb said and what Shannon said on keeping it simple, using what my students have already been familiar with. So what I use, in fact, let me see if I can present my screen to you. See if this works. Okay, so if you can see, I am my favorite organizational tool as a teacher is really Google Calendar. And this is not something new. This is something that my students have seen and see all the time. And most of my colleagues use Google Classroom, and I do use that for doling out specific assignments. But for my day-to-day, we're on a block schedule, so you can see we have every other day there is content delivery. For my day-to-day, I have not only the overarching standards and objectives, but then we have also the specific pieces that we're doing. So for example, they're used to coming in every class, what are we doing today? You know, well, look on the calendar because you'll see. So every day in my Google Calendar, my Google Meet is there, and we have our check-in. And actually, this has been so wonderful because for that Romance language, gender issue of, especially in French, je suis présent ou je suis présente, gosh, the kids could never get that. But now, when we do attendance in this very microcosm of a Google Hangout, they are really now aware of the agreement when they are present or not, because I actually take real-time attendance in this synchronous learning system that we have. So that has been, keeping that same delivery system has been wonderful for me, and I think for my students. Oh yeah, that's right, you're on the calendar, madame. So sometimes they'll go to look for me in the Hangout, or rather in Google Classroom, but I just love the visual of the Google Classrooms, Google Calendar rather. Geez, so much Google. So I really identified with that piece about keeping it to something that is a layout that is familiar. On the same token, it has been nice to try some new things that challenged me, but was still familiar to my students. So I just wanted to share, I had and I think some of our other facilitators, maybe even Shannon and Caleb, have used TikTok as well. Maybe not so much Caleb with the young ones, but Shannon in the high school. So the assignment is nothing crazy. It was just really a list of different routine items that they were doing, but I wanted them to own them and show me themselves doing them and say that they were doing them. And I just really quickly, I had just so many great kids that either do TikToks all the time or never had done TikToks. And I said, fine, if you don't do TikToks, do a regular input video from your phone. But this is just a little bit of a piece of a student just giving a bit of her routine. I don't know if it's going to play actually on here. Yeah, I think it's too much for my piece. But so the idea here then being is just stretching. So I had never done a TikTok, but I knew that my students did. So I was still in the familiar zone territory for them, unfamiliar for me, but it really brought on some great results. And what then we did in turn with that is with the students, we did what I called virtual charades. So after these were due, then I pulled them up. The sound was off for them, so I, was saying, well, qu'est-ce qu'elle fait? Elle se douche or elle se lave la figure? And so then I was having interpretive questions for them to give feedback, and again, using my virtual popsicle stick. So I was able to use my own students' work to then elicit content responses from them, and that seemed to work really well, and I wanted to share that with you. I guess another little piece that I've also been using that I find wonderful, and again, it has been a piece of an application that I've used before, so I wouldn't recommend going out and shoving this on your students just with the keep it simple rule. But if they have used Seesaw before, it's a wonderful way to get them doing presentational, even some interpersonal, because depending on your settings, they can like and comment both in text and in actual voice. They can comment on input from on each other. So it's like a social media platform or personal social media in the educational setting. So those are some of my top little pieces that I have been finding very helpful for me. And I guess at the end of the day, one of my biggest things is I'm so grateful to my district for putting us on the synchronous mode, because I miss that interaction with my kids. If I can't have that physical in the same space, in the same room, at least I can see them if they choose to turn on their computer or not, and I don't require either way. But I'm really grateful to have that connection with them every day, and I think they are really enjoying it. So I would encourage you, if your school doesn't have synchronous, see about a way of creating a moment. Gosh, can we do a chat? Plan it a week in advance. Guys, I'm really miss seeing you. I'd really like to put a chat together. It might be risky, as long as it's okay by your district. Do it so you can touch base with your kids. Do it for yourself and do it for the kids so that they can see each other. I think, as we're saying, it's so important to come together at this time. And I'm grateful for you all listening. I hope that came through clearly. And I'm just so grateful for this organization and for all of you joining in today. Thanks, Noemi.
No, thank you, Alice. Those are some great, I love the TikTok. I just downloaded TikTok, but I have no idea how to use it yet. So I'll have to figure that out. But we do have some questions in the chat that I just want to be mindful of the folks that are asking and making sure that their answers are provided. So the first question is with regards to Seesaw. They're asking, what is Seesaw and how does it work? I know. Thank you, Shannon, for sharing out a little bit the website URL. I've seen Seesaw used primarily on the phone or the iPad, mostly at the elementary level, and I feel it's a great portfolio tool as well, to compile student work. But Alice, do you have any other input about Seesaw and why you like it or what it does?
Sure.
Oh, you're muted. Nope, you're back.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. It keeps toggling me on and off, and I don't know what was going on. Yeah. Portfolio is definitely the word, but what I like about it it's in the settings is that you're able to have students then view each other's work and comment either with something as simple as a like. They can also comment with text in your target language, and they can comment with audio. So you have some interpretive possibilities, albeit not in real time, but they can make comments, or they can certainly say, oh, I get up too at the same time if we're doing routine, or wow, you go to bed so late. That is a possibility. I don't always have them do that, but it is a platform in the sense that it is a portfolio, and it has that social interaction piece. It is still a familiar thing for them that they can like each other's and comment on it.
Thanks, Alice. Another question that was brought up was about Google Calendar and sharing that with students. I noticed that you use Google Classroom. So is that the way that everything is linked to Calendar? I've set up my own calendar groups under settings, and I've invited people through email to be part of my calendar. But we use Canvas in my district, not Google Classroom. So just curious how you approach that.
Yeah, very interesting. I was using Google Calendar before Google Classroom made calendars for the classroom. So I actually disabled that function in Google Classroom because I didn't want everything that I put out to be on the calendar. I can put that on for myself. For me, it's a visual planning tool that's a go-to place. I don't have to send it out to them, they come to it. So it's sort of like a home base. And as far as sharing it out, you have to go into your settings and make sure it would be visible to anyone who has the link. Again, this might not be something that you want to try at this moment, keeping it simple, but I'm happy to work with anyone. Reach out to me. It's such a fabulous tool. I would be happy to help you get started on it. And once you do, it is easy, but certainly reach out and I can help you get started with that.
Thanks, Alice. I agree. Google Calendar is my life. So I use it very frequently with everything that I do. So I'm just looking at the time. It's about 3:45. I want to obviously ask the group if anyone else has any questions specific for Alice or Caleb or Shannon or myself. I know I didn't tell you a little bit about what I'm doing, but I thought it was more important to stick to what's happening in the teacher world. And these three individuals are teaching. I'm in a supervision role right now. So I go back and forth with what I'm also managing and helping and supporting. And I've seen some really great things over the last few weeks from some of my own staff. So it was great to hear from these three about what is working for them and how they're really finding creative approaches to what we were doing face to face. So I wanted to just put it out there. Questions, wonderings, comments that you'd like to share with the group. There's 53 of us still here. So that to me is a measure of success if we still have the same amount of participants towards the end as we started with. So thank you all for being here and sticking around and being a part of this today.
Thank you so much.
Noemi, we have a question from Ellen to Caleb. How
Sure.
does he format small group online meetings, number of students and timing?
Okay, sorry, it took me a little bit to get myself unmuted, but thanks for the question. I'm gonna share in the chat section. It's gonna look a little bit jumbled, but this Google Doc that I just shared right before Caroline's is how to host glitch-free online meetings. So it has everything there from platforms to setting up expectations for the students, ideas for things, and it just goes sort of like a script for that. So since we're a little bit short on time, let me just paste it in there again. It's this right there in the chat box, has sort of like line by line for hosting glitch-free online meetings.
Eileen, I can also just talk for a quick second. So in all of my classes, not just my classes where I have an in-class support teacher, I'm doing small group chat. So I don't know how it's working for the rest of the state of New Jersey to have like 26 or even more, 30 students in one Zoom. But that doesn't feel just the same way I don't do a ton of whole group instruction in my normal class. I'm not doing that online. So basically I just set up a calendar so that I make sure that I touch on each student during the week. So I think I shared earlier that my Zoom sessions are only like 25 minutes, not a full 55. So I break them up. And then of course I prioritize during the week, like who's struggling the most. So based on that survey, who's struggling just with the structure, and then also the other data I'm getting about who's struggling with like the language component of this. And then I group them based on that, right? Who needs help getting organized? Who needs help understanding, you know, different vocabulary? Who's struggling? So I feel like there's just no way 25 minutes would work with 26 students, which is, you know, my scenario for this year. So today my biggest group was 8 students, and it seemed like everyone had an opportunity to hear and be heard. And I felt like it was much more manageable today.
I'm checking the chat for more. Yes, it's impossible to control 26 students. It's definitely not an optimal teaching environment to have all of them tuned in. Like even right now with so many of us, we were obviously as facilitators a little bit nervous, wanting to make sure that we can address everyone's questions and support you all in this journey as best we could, but understanding there's a lot of us in one space right now sharing. So I'm just checking. Questions?
And also, just to go back on that, Noemi, about the controlling, that was Abel. If back in the first slide, there's an etiquette for within a chat. And that's what happened at our school. I mean, no one had, in fact, Google Hangouts and Google Meet had been, you know, verboten in our school. They did not have it turned on in our Google school. And so it was, as you said, Noemi, it was a risk when our district pressed that button to allow that to happen in the virtual setting. It was a risk. And has it been flawless? Absolutely not. Have there been some kids doing some things they shouldn't have? Yes. Has that been dealt with? Yes. But that little graphic that Noemi put in there, and if we're going to have this, guys, we're going to have this meeting, maybe break it up into the smaller groups as Shannon is suggesting, or if, here we're going to have a special topic. This is what we're going to talk about. Be prepared, but these are the rules, and we're just going to do it. And it is risky, but I found that the students step up. They step up, and they're happy to be able to communicate with each other and to have that interactive piece that has been missing for us. Just my 2 cents.
I also just want to, because I failed to make mention of this earlier. For me, someone who I've been learning a great deal from is Leslie Gran, and she has been sharing an incredible amount of resources and ideas and tools through her website, through Facebook, through her Pinterest board. She has everything in a Google folder, just pretty much like, here you go, here, everybody. So she's been, for me at least, someone that I keep looking at as really leading the way and putting out some really great products. And on a very dorky note, I've also appreciated Slides Mania and Slides Carnival to set up slideshows. There's all these really fun templates. So if you want to go down that road with me and find some cool slideshows, that's just something that I've gravitated towards with this, to just play around and be a little bit more creative with what I'm preparing and what I'm sharing out. So just wanted to make mention of those 2 things. So Leslie Gran, yes, Leslie Gran is her name. Any ideas about final assessments? I hope we don't have to have any. How about that? My hope is that we can continue to grow students' proficiency in a manner that that works for them, right? Given what access they have to technology, because as Shannon pointed out before, not every student is equipped with Wi-Fi or a tool. I know a lot of our kids do have phones, but it's not necessarily the best learning platform, right, for real work. So I'm hoping that with the elimination of the SGO criteria at the end of the year and a shift in the way that at least the state of New Jersey is doing evaluations for the end of the year, that I'm hoping other states will also understand that a lot of this is not what we're used to, and our students aren't used to it, and we need to just be flexible and kind to one another with all of this. So fingers crossed we're not doing final assessments, but formative assessments, sure. I think formative assessments can happen on a frequent basis, depending on how much time you have with your kids each week. You don't want to overload or bombard them, but formative, sure. Summative, that's where we start to talk about, well, is this really meaningful? Is this their voice in the speaking prompt? Is this their actual work, or did they go to Google Translate? So we're having, in my own district, some academic integrity issues that we're starting to navigate and really just trying to set into place, like, no, if we're taking this online quiz today, you have to adhere to these norms before we begin. So, but again, we're figuring it out as we go, which is not the best way to put it, but it's just it's kind of the cards that we've been dealt with right now that we're figuring out together. So I just spoke a lot. I want to just make mention, any other questions, ideas, thoughts before we wrap it up for today?
No, I just wanted to remind everybody that FLENJ has a lot more offerings for these tech chats. So if people want to dig deeper into assessing the other modes, like maybe you can just share with them where to get more information about that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Shannon. So we have 5 other chats scheduled for the rest of the month of April, including on April 30th, a happy hour to reflect about how the process has been going and our work thus far. So this Thursday, we'll be highlighting the interpretive mode with, again, fantastic facilitators that I've reached out to that have agreed to help out with supporting us all. The interpersonal mode will be next week. Presentational mode will also be next week. And then putting it all together and really thinking about the 3 modes, as Caleb highlighted today as well, will be on April 28th. So you can sign up for additional chats in the future. We do have a limit of 250 participants, just because that's what we can handle on these GoToMeetings calls. But we welcome, obviously, you to join us again if you're interested at any of these upcoming chats.
I just wanted to say, and I know that this is not super fun, but I have done a couple quick Google assessments where if you have a domain at your school, so my school happens to be a Google school, and you can actually have it so that once the child is signed in to that domain, it has a bit of a security. I know folks were asking about assessments, but, and I know this will be it later within the tech series, but you can, if you have a domain, actually set your Google assessments to be domain only, and it allows them to not go to any other field. It sort of locks up the computer. You know, there's always ways, because I can always be here on my phone looking up something else, but it is a bit of a piece of security. Oh, and but before we forget, Noemi, if we could get everyone to turn their cameras on if they don't mind, because we wanted to get that picture.
So if you're
So if,
currently camera shy, if you can turn your camera on for a moment, because we're gonna smile and take a picture. Yay! There you guys look great.
we were saying, the facilitators, we were saying how we actually showered and put on something else other than pants today.
All right. Alice, do you want to take the picture or should I?
Okay, I'll get it. Is that, anybody else want to come on? I think everyone's getting their camera set up. We'll wait a few more moments. I also want to say, and I know Noemi had mentioned it early on, again, thank you so much. It's might be a little awkward to ask, but we do have a donation link. As you know, FLENJ had to cancel our annual conference, and we had to cancel the last 2 workshops. So we do have a donation page out there if you feel so inclined to give back. We would truly be grateful. That is in the chat line as well. So just a little plug for that as we're getting ready. All right, everyone, smile. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, wistiti. Woo! Great looking group. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys. Again, how you get your professional development certificate, please provide us with feedback about your experience here at our first tech chat. So once you fill out that quick feedback form, it will automatically send you a digital professional development certificate. So just so you know, we're not going to be mailing anything out and you have to fill in your name. So just to keep that consistent. So once we get that feedback form, you'll get a digital copy of your professional development certificate for this session today. Okay. All right. Well, on behalf of Foreign Language Educators of New Jersey, FLENJ, I'd like to thank again my 3 amazing facilitators, Alice, Caleb, and Shannon. Thank you so much for your insight. To all 50 some odd folks that were here today, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a part of this very difficult yet empowering work. I'm finding I'm learning a great ton through this experience, which I'm sure you all are as well. So thank you again, and we hope to see you again soon at a future chat.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noemi.
Thank you.